We're stateside once again for the second of 3 races taking part in the USA on the 2023 Formula 1 calendar. This time it's Texas to the Circuit of the Americas. So I'm here to tell you everything that you need to know about this weekend's racing, and of course stick around for my predictions at the end of this video as well. Because last year, although Max Verstappen picked up his 13th victory of the season, which was quite predictable, the rest was absolute chaos. Carlos Sainz started on pole position but was taken out by George Russell at turn 1. We had Lewis Hamilton jump Charles Leclerc after Ferrari messed up a pit stop, which I guess you could have probably predicted Ferrari messing up a pit stop. But then Lewis Hamilton was hunting down Max Verstappen, trying to get that first win of 2022 for Mercedes. To no avail, Max Verstappen held on to the victory. Lewis Hamilton had to settle for second place. Fernando Alonso was smashed into by Lance Stroll. This was back when they weren't teammates. The Alpine was sent airborne, yet Fernando Alonso still managed to finish the Grand Prix where Lance Stroll didn't, so that was quite confusing. However, it was one of the best races of the entire season, and this year looks like it's set to match it, because we're going to see 56 laps of the 5.13 kilometer track come Sunday, 2 DRS zones now down the pit straight and at the end of sector 2 down towards turn 12. There are 20 corners completing this counterclockwise circuit, and lots of elevation changes and different corner styles, making it really difficult for the teams to absolutely nail their setup, which on top of that, the fact that it's a sprint weekend and they've only got one free practice should actually lead to some really interesting racing. There's also a lot of overtaking opportunities down towards turn 1 in particular, and the tyres are going to take a beating, especially through the high-speed first sector. So Pirelli have opted for the middle 3 in their range, the C4 soft, the C3 medium, and the C2 hard, which is the same compounds chosen for last season. We saw the majority of teams aim for a 2-stop strategy in Austin last year. The soft was pretty much just a qualifying tyre, but as I said, with the sprint format added to Austin this year, it may change some of the teams' ideas, and maybe we'll see a soft tyre compound, especially for those teams not making it through to Q3 and SQ3 as well. Hold on to those soft compound tyres. Maybe they'll do something a little bit different in the race, although it does look like the weather is going to lead to dry running throughout the entire weekend. It looks incredibly hot in Texas, only slightly cooler than it was in Qatar, but this is during the day where Qatar was at night, so kind of makes sense that they're around a similar temperature zone, but zero chance of rain over the entire weekend as it stands right now. In terms of the Constructors Championship, I think it's really interesting that the battle for second place didn't really shuffle too much in Qatar, considering we had a Ferrari not start and a Mercedes drop out. Nothing really happened between George Russell and Charles Leclerc. Also, the battle for 4th is really interesting as McLaren are on that uptick and Aston Martin have continued to spiral downwards. Only 11 points now separate McLaren in 5th place and Aston Martin in 4th place. And Alfa Romeo actually took 8th place from Haas, but Haas have a lot of upgrades coming this weekend, so Haas will be desperate to try and claim 4 points and claim 8th place in the Constructors back from the Alfa Romeo car. Moving on to the Drivers' Championship, Hamilton's chances of catching Sergio Perez took a tiny little hit in Qatar, although Sergio Perez not putting in the performances has made sure that that is still alive with 5 races left to go. Lando Norris is the real shock to me. I know he's got a lot of podiums recently, but I didn't realize how close he was to 5th place and how close he was to actually overtaking both of the Ferrari cars. So that'll be an interesting battle to see where the McLaren is this weekend. Lance Stroll is absolutely desperate for a result, not only for his confidence, but also to hold off the Alpines. Pierre Gasly now just 1 point behind, Esteban Ocon 3 points behind. Both Alpines could easily get the jump on Lance Stroll because there are points available in the sprint and in the race as well. Then there's Bottas versus Hulkenberg, and it has swung in the Finns' favour. But again, Nico Hulkenberg, the Haas with the upgrades, will he be able to bounce back and get 14th back from Valtteri Bottas? And then Daniel Ricciardo is back, 5 races to go. 2 points needed to overtake Liam Lawson in the standings. We'll have to see what the Australian can do from that position. Moving on to my predictions, I'm going to go for Ferrari as my first winners. I feel like the Qatar Grand Prix was a little bit of an off weekend for the Scuderia, but actually they've had great pace since the summer break, and although it was a huge opportunity to close the gap to Mercedes, obviously with Lewis Hamilton crashing out, the fact that Carlos Sainz had that fuel leak and didn't actually take part, and then we saw that George Russell was so much quicker than Charles Leclerc, actually only losing out 1 point to the Silver Arrows wasn't too bad, especially because this weekend in Texas, they should be so much faster. The track suits their car a lot better, especially in the middle sector. I'm expecting the Ferrari to be the quickest car, if not the second quickest car behind the Red Bulls. I can see them possibly being slower in qualifying, but then really turning up their setup and having really good race pace come Sunday, which leads me on to my second winners, which has to be McLaren. They are on fire right now, and especially in that first sector. I was looking at Suzuka's first sector, there because Austin's is fairly similar. McLaren was so dominant through there, and I feel like they're going to be the same this weekend. They're going to be really close to Max Verstappen come qualifying. I could see it being Max Verstappen and Lando Norris on the front row either way around. I think the only thing that might play against McLaren is the tyre wear might bite back a little bit come race day. I think they should be okay, but they probably won't be able to hold off Max Verstappen because that Red Bull just has so much better tyre wear than every other car on the Formula One field. However, the real important thing for McLaren this weekend is jumping Aston Martin in the constructor standings, which I feel like they'll definitely do. 11 points is not a lot considering the points hauls that they have been bringing in weekend after weekend recently, and it will just be a nail in the coffin for the team in green in particular. Which is why I almost had Aston Martin as my first loser, but I actually opted for Mercedes because I think they're just going to rue not getting those podium places in Qatar and the massive points haul that they could have had their two drivers not come together. I just feel like the elevation changes are really not good for that Mercedes car. I know that the porpoising has gone away and we no longer speak about porpoising, but the Mercedes car really doesn't like bumps and curves, and this track just doesn't suit their car in any way whatsoever. Plus the lack of setup time with it being a sprint race. They'll only have one free practice session to try and get the ride height of the Mercedes correct, and I just can't see them doing it. Plus there's the ongoing internal battle between their two drivers. George Russell and Lewis Hamilton just will not leave each other alone when it comes to being on track, and because they're going to have similar race pace to each other, probably similar qualifying pace as well in Austin, plus the way that the Austin track is, I just feel like we're going to see them be really close to one another once again. I know that I predicted them coming together in Qatar and that came true, so I'll help Mercedes out a little bit this weekend and say that they keep it clean between them, but it's still not a great weekend for the Mercedes team. Whereas my final losers might be a little bit of a surprise to some people. I'm just kind of worried about Haas. I know that they're bringing a huge update package, what they've called their biggest in-season upgrade ever, but that also then brings a lot of pressure after sacrificing a lot of this year for this pivot. Obviously, they were working on the Ferrari concept for so long, and then they decided to actually scrap that and completely move over to this Red Bull style concept that they're going to be bringing in for the last 5 races of the season. And I feel like because they dropped behind Alfa Romeo in the Qatar Grand Prix weekend, there's now even more pressure to try and get back above Alfa Romeo to get this to work straight away, and it just feels very Haas to have a massive upgrade, have all of this positivity, and it not quite hit the ground running. And I can just see, I don't know, Kevin Magnussen losing a front wing at turn 1 or smashing into somebody. It just feels very Haas. So overall, what I'm expecting is the battle for second place in the Constructors to get even closer between Ferrari and Mercedes this weekend in Austin, and McLaren to finally officially displace Aston Martin as the 4th fastest team on the grid, whilst Haas struggle with a little bit of the pressure that they've put themselves under this weekend with that massive upgrade. So when I was then looking at my podium, the Red Bull should still be the best car and have the benefit of tyre wear over the rest of the field, so I feel like it's going to be fairly smooth sailing for Max Verstappen this weekend, put him top of the podium. Seems like a fairly easy prediction. Lando Norris has the better tyre wear of the two McLarens, and I feel like that might be something that Oscar just slightly suffers with. So I've dropped Oscar off the podium, but kept Lando Norris in second place. And the Ferrari car looks set to be really quick this weekend. So I've slotted Carlos Sainz into third place. I think he's been really good since the summer break. We'll be absolutely gutted that he didn't get to take part in Qatar, and I'm expecting a bounce back from the Spaniard this weekend, unless he has to take a power unit penalty, which has been kind of rumoured about. In that case, I'll say Charles Leclerc will be third rather than Carlos Sainz. I still think there's going to be a Ferrari up there on the podium, but I'd love to know what you think. Let me know your predictions in the comments down below. And if you've enjoyed this video and you want to know more about those Haas upgrades that are coming that I hinted at earlier, I put together this video here, so click that link and I'll see you over there.